This is a podcast by the Straits Times.
When I'm at dinner parties, I tell people, they ask me, what do I study? I often study pretty dark stuff. I have been studying narcissist leaders. I study why people are cynical at work. Why do they just feel like, at this office, no matter what I do, what I say, no one's going to listen to me.
At the workplace, we often work in teams. And with that comes different team dynamics, each with individuals in a different state of mind that affect the way they work and the way we relate to each other. Against this backdrop, what are some negative habits that will be helpful to recognize and curb so that we can work better and ultimately live better? And what are some strategies that would allow us to do so? Hello, I'm Tay Hong Yi, and you're listening to Headstart On Record, the show that gives a head start to your personal finance and career. We have an organisational psychologist who is well placed to comment on the research insights in the subject and how we can translate it to our lives at work. She has a doctorate on the subject, and she has been an organisational psychologist for 20 years, studying interpersonal dynamics in teams between leaders and followers, especially pertaining to negotiation, conflict, trust building, and psychological safety. She is Dr. Ruchi Sinha, Associate Professor with the Nanyang Business School. Welcome to the show, Dr. Sinha.
Thank you.
Now, as an organizational psychologist, I'm just going to cut to the chase, pun not intended. So this really spins off from an earlier column just a couple of weeks back on procrastination, which you provided some really interesting insights into the nuts and bolts of procrastination so that get a sense of the beast. So now for our podcast audience, over a more informal and yet comprehensive conversation, perhaps could you share with us, from your perspective, what is procrastination and why does it happen?
Sure. So it is a word that a lot of people might be familiar with. And when you ask someone to describe what procrastination is, they often describe it as, I know I have to do something and I'm not doing it. And it's either I'm feeling guilty about it or it's annoying me. From a research perspective, it's basically the act of delaying things that are important. Could be any level of importance. And you know that when you delay it, it's going to cause problems. So there's that awareness that not doing it is a problem, but yet you're not doing it. And that is procrastination.
Does capacity come into it as well? Like the ability to actually complete it and yet still not doing so?
Yeah. So when you asked me, the second part of your first question was, why does it happen? So there are lots of reasons why it could happen. And it's been studied over the years. There have been, research studies done, especially around academic procrastination. So when, you're a teenager, you have to study or the exams are coming. But it's true in adults, working adults. You could procrastinate about, grocery shopping, honestly. But there are many reasons why it happens. A lot of times people thought it is because you're not planned, because you're bad at managing time. And so if you just made a to-do list, you'd stop procrastination. That is actually not true, because what really drives procrastination far more than skill is the fact that there are some negative emotions you're trying to avoid, which you haven't really become aware of. And therefore, you have to do something, but you don't do it.
So procrastinators, contrary to what some might believe, they're not just lazy. And we should, as people, reframe it. Part of dealing with it as individuals and I guess as teams as well and as organizations is to really rethink how it means and get into the details of it. And then that's when you can form coherent strategies to try and manage it. What do you say?
Absolutely. It's definitely not equivalent to laziness. In fact, there's research to show that high achievers, people who are extremely successful, get a lot of things done, also procrastinate. And they also procrastinate because you could procrastinate for one reason you procrastinate is because you have a perfectionist tendency, right? So you're a high achiever, people are expecting great work out of you, it's an important project, and you don't do it because you're worried it won't be perfect.
There's something I relate to a lot. well, at least speaking personally, bringing some personal experience to this as a journalist, especially when you're working on pieces that you've conceived of yourself. You're chasing your own leads, your own ideas. Timelines are a bit fluid. And as a result, there's always this, at least for me, this state of mind where I think there might be a better time to do something. So let's put it off until the time is right, because this doesn't feel like the right time to do justice to it. And then in the end, the window just narrows and narrows and narrows, but yet the deadlines are so fluid. So I'm wondering, in terms of how fixed and how visceral deadlines are, does that impact that sort of decision to procrastinate as well?
Yeah. Thank you for sharing what you've shared. And I'm more than willing to, piggyback on your sharing and be like, I consider myself pretty type A. I'm extremely planned. But there are some times I know I have to get a certain thing done on a manuscript as a deadline. It's 3 months usually to revise and resubmit for a top-tier journal. And in the first month, I will be like, okay, I'm getting my stuff together. I'm reading. I will explore, do tangential research. And then I'll put a note on my calendar that I'm going to do this today. And then I'll start cleaning my desk, watering the plants, answering emails that totally are not that important. And then you think about it. One reason could be because you think you need to be in the just right state of mind to write that perfect paragraph for your manuscript. Now, there are types of procrastinator. The ones you're talking about, the one you and I shared a little bit, is the perfectionist procrastinator, okay? So they're like, okay, everything has to be right. Like my desk has to be clean, all my, easy work has to be done, and I need 6 hours to write this perfect show or this perfect manuscript. And you convince yourself that you need just 6 hours. Oftentimes we underestimate the amount of time we need because we want it so perfect. And so we keep losing time and we get closer to the goal, and then we have 2 hours left. And it's not perfect because we're feeling guilty, we're feeling angry that we should have done it earlier. But oftentimes we do it for things we care a lot. You said you were writing your own show. It was your own name. If the show doesn't do well, it'll hurt. But if you put 3 months to write the show and you started early and it doesn't do well, it'll hurt more because it'll be like, I gave my best and it didn't work. If you push it and you did it under a time constraint, you have the comfort of saying, I didn't have enough time. Next time, I'll give myself more time. So it's your brain is protecting you from a fear you have by making you an excuse. There are other non-perfectionist reasons we procrastinate. So because that'll help in figuring out how to look after yourself if you're procrastinating. There are some people who actually work better under pressure, and they believe that about themselves. So, they'll be like, I know I will get my best work done when I have a time pressure. So they genuinely delay it. And there's some evidence that there are some people like that, not all of us. And for them, procrastination is not really procrastination, it's actually getting the right conditions. But perfectionism is one. And the second one is we just find the task a little bit of a stretch. So we believe we don't have all the skills, all the resources to do it. And the point is we feel paralyzed because we think it's important and we don't have it in us. Now, there's no truth to, like in the research, there are people who are objectively have the capacity who also think they can't do it. That's because the problem is so big. So you have to write a 100-page PhD thesis. That seems really big mountain to climb. But if you decided that today I'm going to write the first 2 pages of my thesis, okay, then you're like, okay. But then if you have this idea that my first 2 pages have to be perfect and they are going to decide how good my entire 100-page thesis is, then you won't do it.
Yeah, so types, perfectionists,
overwhelmed, anxious, a pressure lover.
Pressure lover, okay.
And actually there is a fourth, which is like this optimist. They are so confident that they have all the skills and that they can get things done so quickly that they overestimate the amount they can get done and underestimate the time. So they procrastinate not because they don't want to do it. They just think it'll take them half an hour to do something, which unfortunately might take them 5. So if you look at all of these 4s, your question was, what can you actually do about it? the number one thing you have to do about it is become aware and label the emotion. Right? So you're sitting, and I'm going to take you as the example. You're writing your own show. It's an important show for you. You decided this morning you were going to write it. You came, sat on your desk, and now you don't want to write it. Now you're checking your email, you're doing something else. In that moment, you have to ask yourself, why are you not writing it? Are you not writing it because you're feeling scared, fearful that you're not going to be creative enough, or it's not going to be nice enough? Or you just haven't, you're not in the state of mind, you're tired, you need a coffee. But you really have to ask yourself, oftentimes it's a fear of failure. Oftentimes it's a need for certainty. You want to have the greatest idea come out first. But we know that doesn't happen, especially with writing. I write for a living, right?
Yes.
That's my job. And no matter how many years I've been doing this, I want my sentences to sound good the first time I write them. And I know they never will. So if you're writing a report, you're at work, you're writing a show, you're writing a paper, you're about to make a presentation, you have to first do a rehearsal. You have to get something on paper. So the solution lies in the Swiss cheese method, which is, even if you don't feel like doing it, do 2 minutes, then 7 minutes, then 10 minutes of the task, and then switch off. Then go water your plants or clean your desk. But make a hole in the task. Because it's only when you make small holes that it doesn't become overwhelming. And when you get that first few, like for me, the first few ideas on the paper, you can revise it.
And other than the Swiss cheese method, does reducing distractions help?
Sometimes reducing distractions could itself be the procrastination act.
Yes,
you're cleaning your
desk.
desk.
That's the paradox of it, because it just set me thinking, because your example of clearing the easy emails, I relate to it so much. Because I think also part of it, especially for those of us who might be dipping our toes into labeling it and trying to really coherently chip away at all these issues to build confidence, really doing these little tasks. So I guess this natural stepping stone in a sense, right? To build confidence, to do that big thing. And hopefully that puts you on a path to be in a place to not procrastinate further.
Yeah. Actually, because you said the email cleaning you relate to, I actually made a little list for myself before I came here on what are all the different ways. And I think if I can just for a second say those things we do, which we don't call procrastination, but if you catch yourself doing it, that is a great time to think, are you procrastinating? Because awareness is the first one. So you decide you're working on an important project, you start organizing your workplace, right? You spend 2 hours filing old papers, fixing the lights, making your seat perfect to sit down. You suddenly open Google and you start checking the next fact, a very important fact, and then you spend 3 hours reading some articles on Straits Times, doing research on that fact. You could sort emails. You suddenly remember your computer needs an update. You start doing that. So the thing about procrastination is it's such a protective, psychological, unconscious thing. It's only when you're doing these things that you have to call yourself out. So even yesterday, I was procrastinating. I came out of my office. I was working from home. And instead of working on something, I think I was bored, honestly. And the emotion was boredom. And I didn't name it. And I wanted to do something exciting. So I started doing something around the house, which was related, like filling out a different project. But if at that moment I had just stopped and said, I'm just getting bored, that's why I'm stopping to work, then I will find myself an entertainment for 5 minutes, get my mood right, and come back.
So that's very interesting here, because what it sounds to me like, procrastination is not just about delaying, right? But it's also about priorities. Sometimes you're doing other things, and therefore it's not just about a straightforward delay, but also about how you prioritize things relating. And the way you prioritize it might not relate to the importance, the real importance of it, and the real impact of it, and the real underlying motivation and need for it.
Absolutely. And a lot of this procrastination actually multiplies stress. We're talking about funny things we do as humans, but at the end of the day, when there's an important task and you're delaying it, you're not being lazy. You're doing other things on your to-do list. So you feel productive. You feel busy. You've spent 8 hours doing very many important things, but not the one that really had a deadline or really needed your attention. So what it does is it multiplies stress. You might miss out on that deadline. It can affect interpersonal relationships. There are research studies to show that people who are high on procrastination, sometimes they don't make for good team members because they'll procrastinate on certain tasks and distract the other members with tasks. So I think one of the things apart from the 2-minute, just make a 2-minute dent on a task. When you don't feel like doing a task, ask yourself what you're feeling. Name it. I'm bored. I'm anxious. I'm scared. I don't think I'm feeling I have the skills to do it. Question yourself. Reframe it. I've done this before. I have written research papers. You've written shows before. Why is this one so important? And what I do today, is that going to be the final product? No. So it's the reframing that matters, which is attacking your negative emotions. And there are some other things you can do, but you can actually make your work schedule in such a way that you manage your moods. So there are certain times of the day that you know about yourself that you work better. That's when you prioritize the most important tasks for that. That's when you block the time and literally with a calendar note saying, this time I will not get distracted. The rest of the time, maybe it's okay for me to be distracted.
Do you apply any of these yourself in your work?
Yes, I do, but it's a constant struggle. Like I said, I have a high need for certainty when I'm working on a new project, which stretches my skills. So I'm writing a grant for an AI that is due next week.
Oh, goodness.
And yesterday...
Thank you so much for taking the time down amid all that.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, I have 2 grants applications due next week. And I was like, oh, yeah, I should just go and do a podcast. No, I'm just kidding.
But hopefully that helps to put you in the state of mind to really power through it.
Absolutely, because after doing this podcast, I can't go home and water my plants. I will have to work on the grant application.
So, since we're talking really more generally about your work, how would you describe your work to a layperson? Let's say you're at a dinner party, acquaintance, a friend of a friend, strikes up dinner chatter, light conversation with you. How would you describe what you do to them?
So I was born and brought up in India, and I'll tell you first that in all dinner parties, the minute they found out I was a psychologist, they thought I was a face reader, right? They would just look at me and be like, tell me what I'm thinking. And I was like, I don't think I have that power, but oftentimes when I say I'm a psychologist, they get scared at dinner parties. That's the first reaction. Then I have to explain to them that, I'm an academic, I do research, I teach, and then I say I do organizational psychology, and then they think I organize cupboards, and I'm like so there is a little bit of misconception. So I might as well say I'm an organizational psychologist, which means I study human behavior, emotions, and thoughts at work. So not in your mind all the time. So oftentimes when I'm at dinner parties, I tell people, they ask me, what do I study? I often study pretty dark stuff. I have been studying narcissist leaders. I study why people are cynical at work. Why do they just feel like, at this office, no matter what I do, what I say, no one's going to listen to me. How does that lead to disengagement? I study how people break trust at work. So how do they, have conflicts or hurt other people? But then there are some positive things to all of this, which is then I learn how to manage emotions. I study how to build trust, how to build voice. So by the time I'm done, I don't give such a long introduction at dinner parties, by the way. But yeah.
That's fine. That would be a very interesting dinner party. It's very interesting. I think you'd make a great dinner guest. Whoever has you as a dinner guest is really lucky in that sense. And you touched on some of it when you were laying out what you did for work. Aside, and procrastination aside, what are some of your favorite insights or phenomena that have arisen from organizational psychology research in the field in general, not just what you do?
Not just what I do. Here, I thought I was going to plug in all my awesome research papers.
Well, you can do both.
No. Well, I think as an organizational psychology and psychologist, there are lots of things that have touched upon have been fascinating. I would say psychological safety is definitely one high on my list, both in terms of I study voice, I try and see why there are so many ideas that could have come out, would have come out, but somehow were either not heard or not deliberated upon when you're making decisions at work. So there's obviously Amy Edmondson's work, but even after her work, there's been research to show that people have genuine fears to speak up. And we're not just sitting in an Asian country and culture is just one factor. But the way the leader solicits voice makes a huge difference. So my own research shows that, leaders who start a work meeting by being empowering. So they come in and they don't just lay down the agenda and tell people in the room what is exactly needed, but they come in and ask, what are some things we can do around this problem? So they come in open-ended, voice is higher. Even though towards the end of a meeting or in the middle, they might say, okay, guys, let's just, cut it down. Let's focus on this. Let's do this in this particular way. So one is voice. And the second is the work, I think, on gender. So a lot of the gender and negotiation research, which I've both written and published on, but also just this idea that why do we have an imposter syndrome? Why do so many people, it's not just women, men have it, minorities have it, children have it, men and women have it, of all gender spectrum. So yeah, those are just some of the topics that I think are fascinating. Maybe we can come back and do another podcast on them.
Maybe on the narcissist one. Goodness, what have you found out from that? Is it published already or is it in progress?
Oh, this is a PhD student of mine. So I've been working for the last 4 years. So it's very difficult to go into an organization and tell them I'm studying narcissism.
I can't imagine.
Yeah, we often try and sort of put it under a nice little thing called charisma or confidence. But on narcissism, and this is something that will change the way you're going to look at narcissists, all of you who are listening, because oftentimes you think narcissist is someone who's just selfish and self-obsessed. But if you've noticed, the people that you call narcissists are also charismatic. They're extremely confident. They're extremely socially skilled. They're able to, get promoted, get to senior leadership position. There is a general rise of narcissism because they're very prominent people. But that's because psychologically, narcissism has 4 subfacets. Okay, 2 of them are relatively positive. One is self-confidence, self-sufficiency, which means they're independent. They feel they don't need other people. But the other 2 is very interesting. It's grandiosity. So I think no end of myself. And the 4th one is vulnerability. Oftentimes, most narcissists are insecure people. Because they're insecure and they think the narcissism they manifest is like a overcorrection of not coming across as insecure as they are. So I don't know if that explains people you had in your mind when you asked me that question.
That's it for you, Amiru. I'm going to put you in the spot.
I can't say much.
Yeah, you shouldn't say much. Both of you work very closely.
Hopefully it's not me, but I try. I'm going to apply the insights for our meetings moving forward. So on the lighter side of things, and we are on the lighter side of things right now, do you find yourself having studied, looked at other people's papers, done your own studies on this, as well as supervised PhD students on this, does it help you to consciously avoid and label a lot of these behaviors in yourself as well as in others? Do you constantly go, oh, this is narcissism, and this person has some of these elements like individuals? Like, do you find yourself translating it to your own life and your own interpersonal interactions in your organization?
Absolutely do. It's like an occupational hazard of doing what I do. So I guess my old aunties and uncles in my Indian dinner parties were not all that wrong. Like, I don't try and read people's mind, but I'm definitely profiling them the second they come in front of me. But I am not narcissistic enough to believe that my profile is accurate. But yes, I do apply concepts. So yeah, it's an occupational hazard. It's like my brain never shuts down. However, I have to tell you that it's much easier to preach than to practice. So I'm in a very privileged position where I can stand on a platform like a teacher or a guest and preach to the world. that doesn't mean that I have learned how to stop procrastinating. It just means that because I understand the causes, maybe I'm slightly quicker at identifying that I'm procrastinating, but I'm not immune to procrastination just because I know it. So I think the biggest sort of takeaway would be from this talk, I want to be is if you procrastinate, you're not lazy. If you delay things that you should do, guilt and shame because you're a bad human being, you're a poor planner, you're not hardworking enough is not where you should go. Because we actually have research to show that if you shame yourself and guilt yourself for delaying things, you procrastinate more. Because you're creating the exact negative emotion
that started you on this path in the first place.
That started you on the path in the first place. So I guess in that sense, I'm more compassionate to myself because I find myself procrastinating. I name the feeling that I'm trying to avoid this grant application. And then I try to tell myself that it's okay, I'm human, just like everyone else.
And I think on that note, what we really hope to really give our audience and listeners of this podcast is that capacity to recognize these feelings and therefore develop and grow that capacity for self-compassion. And on that note, I think this is a great way to end this latest episode of the Headstart On Record podcast. I'm Tay Hong Yi, and if you have any questions or personal stories to share about your state of mind at work, as well as perhaps the narcissists you see in the workplace, do reach out to us. You can find the contact details in the podcast show notes, links to my articles, the Headstart newsletter, or my LinkedIn profile can all be found there too. This podcast episode is edited by Amiru Karim. Thanks for listening.
Send your feedback to podcast@sph.com.sg. Find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or within our Straits Times app. Thanks for listening. Do note, all analyses, opinions, recommendations, and other information in this podcast are for general information purposes only and are not intended to be relied upon as financial advice. You should not rely on them in making any decision. Please consult a fully qualified financial advisor or professional expert for independent advice and verification. To the fullest extent permitted by law, SPH Media shall not be liable for any loss arising from the use of or reliance on any analyses, opinions, recommendations, and other information in this podcast. SPH Media accepts no responsibility or liability whatsoever that may result or arise from the products, services, or information of any third parties. All opinions expressed by participants in this podcast are solely their own and do not reflect the opinions of SPH Media.